In a small Alabama market, an old bell rang above a door everyone had learned to fear. Lan Nguyen was only an elderly shop owner, but her quiet ledgers held a truth powerful men wanted buried. When a corrupt deputy walked in with a fake security fee, no one dared to speak. Then his hand reached across the counter, and the room forgot how to breathe. But beside a former Navy SEAL, a German shepherd named Atlas rose without a command. He did not attack. He simply stood where fear expected no one to stand. Stay with this story and subscribe so you don't miss the next tale of loyalty, courage, and second chances. By the time Bishop Callahan reached the back roads of southern Alabama, the afternoon sun had turned the fields the color of old brass. Cotton rows stretched beyond the cracked two-lane highway. Pine trees stood in dark, patient lines. Every few miles, a church sign leaned toward the road with a promise of mercy, fried chicken, or both. The land looked quiet enough to forgive a man for almost anything. Bishop did not trust quiet. He drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting near the scratched black tactical watch on his left wrist. The watch had survived desert sand, salt water, airport bathrooms, bad coffee, and nights when time itself seemed to crawl on its elbows. He did not look at it often. He touched it. A habit. A small check that the world had not tilted while he was breathing. Beside him, Atlas sat in the passenger seat of the old pickup as if he had been born knowing the weight of command. The German shepherd was 6 years old, sable-coated, black along the shoulders and back, with brown fire hidden in the fur whenever sunlight passed over him. A soft silvering touched his muzzle and chin, giving him the look of an old judge who had already heard all excuses and found most of them disappointing. His right ear carried a small V-shaped nick along the edge, a quiet mark that made him easy to recognize without making him look broken. Bishop had known soldiers who shouted less than that dog. Atlas did not bark at traffic. He did not chase passing shadows. He watched, measured, decided. When Bishop's breathing changed at night, Atlas knew before Bishop did. When a door slammed too hard in a motel hallway, Atlas would rise, cross the room, and press his body against Bishop's leg until the present returned like a reluctant tide. People liked to say Bishop had come home. Bishop had stopped correcting them. He was 43, a former Navy SEAL chief, broad through the shoulders and chest, functional muscle packed onto a frame built by years of carrying weight no man should have to name. His hair was dark brown, nearly black, cut short at the sides and thick on top, with a scatter of gray at the temples that had arrived without asking permission. His jaw was square, his cheekbones high, his nose straight and heavy-bridged. A thin 2-centimeter scar sat at the tail of his right eyebrow, like a comma in a sentence no one had finished. His eyes were dark blue-gray, steady and tired. The kind of eyes that made strangers lower their voices without knowing why. He wore a charcoal black polo that fit close across his shoulders, dark jeans worn pale at the knees, and old brown boots polished not for pride, but for discipline. He looked like a man who had learned how to disappear without ever becoming small. The problem was that the war had followed him into every room. It lived in the chair he chose, always back to a wall. It lived in the way he counted exits before menus. It lived in the space between sleep and waking, when his hand would reach toward the edge of the bed as if some part of him still expected a weapon, a radio, a command whispered through static. Atlas had become the only creature allowed inside that ruined temple, not because the dog understood war, because the dog understood Bishop. Around 5 in the afternoon, Bishop saw the sign for Red Clay Crossing, population small enough that the number had been painted over twice. A gas station sat near the junction, its pumps humming under a rusted canopy. Beside it stood a narrow grocery with clean windows, faded yellow siding, and a hand-painted sign that read, Land's Market. The letters were blue, careful, and slightly uneven. Bishop slowed. Atlas turned his head toward the store before Bishop touched the brake. "You need water?" Bishop asked. Atlas gave him a look that seemed to say Bishop was embarrassing both of them. "Fine. I need coffee." The dog's tail thumped once against the seat. It was not much of a joke, but Bishop took the victory. Some days, humor arrived like a stray cat, suspicious, underfed, and not guaranteed to stay. He parked near the side of the building, where he could see both the front door and the road. He did not think about why. Thinking about it made it worse. Inside Land's Market, the air changed. It smelled of coffee warming too long on a burner, ginger tea, laundry soap, rice sacks, cinnamon candy, fish sauce, cardboard, and rain that had not yet fallen. The place was small but crowded with life. Shelves leaned under bags of jasmine rice, instant noodles, canned peaches, motor oil, cough drops, prayer candles, and toys that looked as if they had been hanging there since 3 presidents ago. A little bell above the door gave a tired silver sound when Bishop entered. Behind the counter stood Lan Nguyen. She was in her early 70s, small and thin, with silver hair twisted into a low bun and held by a brown plastic clip. A plum-colored cardigan rested over a cream blouse patterned with tiny flowers, and a pale blue apron hung slightly crooked across her front. In the apron pocket were a red pen, a small notebook wrapped in clear plastic, and a brass key ring heavy enough to pull the fabric down on one side. She looked up from sorting receipts. For half a second, Bishop saw the calculation in her eyes. Not fear, assessment. Then she smiled. "Good evening," she said, her Vietnamese accent softening the words without weakening them. "You want coffee? Coffee, or you want the coffee that has been punished all day?" Bishop paused. Atlas looked up at him. Bishop said, "Whichever one admits what it is." Lan laughed, a dry little sound like paper being folded. "Honest coffee, rare thing." She reached for a clean cup. Atlas remained beside Bishop's leg, calm but alert. Lan noticed him, and something in her face warmed. "And this serious gentleman?" "Atlas. Atlas," she repeated, as if testing the name for weight. "Good name. Carries the world, yes?" "Most days," Bishop said. Lan bent slightly, not reaching too fast, not making the mistake many people made with working dogs. She offered the back of her hand first. Atlas sniffed once, then allowed her to touch the side of his neck. "Very polite," she said. "More polite than many men who come in here with boots." Bishop's mouth almost moved into a smile. Almost. Lan reached under the counter and produced a small biscuit shaped like a bone. Homemade. No onion, no nonsense. Atlas looked at Bishop. "Traitor," Bishop muttered. The biscuit disappeared with great dignity. There were other customers in the store. Bishop noticed them without seeming to. A woman in a faded denim overshirt stood near the laundry detergent, holding a folded envelope in one hand and a bottle of bleach in the other. She was maybe mid-30s, with tired eyes and black hair tied quickly at the back of her neck. Lan called her Rosa when she asked about her son's school. Rosa Delgado, Bishop gathered, owned the laundromat 2 blocks over. Near the cold drinks, a Vietnamese man in a blue work shirt with image stitched over the pocket studied the cooler, as if the sodas had personally offended him. He had broad, calloused hands, and the posture of someone whose back had made peace with heavy tools, but not with easy living. An HVAC cap sat low on his head. Lon told him she had saved the ginger candy his daughter liked. A young mother came in with 2 children, bought milk, and left without taking her eyes off the road outside for more than a few seconds. That was the first thing Bishop noticed. Not the poverty, not the old shelves, not the tired building. The watching. People watched the road the way Bishop watched doors. That tightened something in him. He took the coffee from Lon and moved toward a small table near the wall. There were 3 chairs. He chose the one with his back to the shelves and his face toward the door. He did it before he knew he had done it. Atlas settled at his left side, angled so he could see both the counter and the windows. Lon saw. She said nothing. That made Bishop like her more. The store carried its own little weather. Rosa slid the envelope into her pocket when tires hissed over gravel outside. Min lowered his chin whenever a vehicle slowed. Even the children, when they returned to ask for candy, spoke in whispers near the front windows. Bishop had learned long ago that fear had a sound, not screaming. Screaming was only fear after it had broken open. Real fear was quieter. It lived in swallowed sentences, unfinished jokes, hands that stopped moving when a certain engine passed by. Atlas heard it too. The dog raised his head. Bishop followed his gaze. A county patrol car rolled past the front of the market slowly, so slowly that it seemed less like driving than inspection. Its windows were tinted dark. The gold stripe along the side caught the sun. It did not stop. Not yet. Rosa turned away from the glass and pretended to compare prices on detergent. Min opened the cooler, closed it, opened it again. Lon kept sorting receipts, but her fingers had gone still. Bishop looked down at Atlas. The dog was no longer resting. He was seated upright, ears forward, tail still. Not aggressive, not afraid. A soldier at the edge of hearing something no one else had admitted was there. Bishop touched the scratched rim of his watch. For a moment, he considered leaving. That thought came clean and practical. He had no business in this. He was passing through. He was no officer of the law, no guardian angel, no man with a badge or a plan. He had spent too many years being sent into rooms other people had ruined. He had earned the right to buy bad coffee and keep driving until the map turned blue at the coast. Then Lon set a small paper bag on the counter. "For the road," she said. Bishop looked at it. "Didn't order anything else." "No," she said. "But the dog is too thin." Atlas, who was not thin by any honest measurement, accepted this judgment with noble silence. Bishop picked up the bag. Inside were 2 more biscuits and a wrapped pastry that smelled faintly of coconut. "You do this for every stranger?" Lon's expression shifted very slightly. "Only the ones who look like they forgot how to be treated kindly." The words struck him harder than they should have. Bishop had taken shrapnel, bad orders, worse news, and the kind of silence that follows a name being removed from a team roster. He had stood through ceremonies where flags folded into triangles felt heavier than the men who carried them. But this small woman in a crooked apron had just handed him a pastry and named something in him with the accuracy of a blade. He had no answer. Atlas pressed his shoulder lightly against Bishop's leg. There it was again. The present, the store, the coffee, the woman behind the counter, the road outside, the bell above the door, and then the patrol car came back. This time it stopped. The engine cut off. Every person in Lon's Market heard it. No one looked directly at the door. That was how Bishop knew the sound had a name. The bell gave its tired silver ring as the deputy entered. He was late 30s, tan uniform pressed sharp enough to cut paper, badge polished bright, duty belt heavy, silver-framed sunglasses hooked into his chest pocket. His hair was cut short and neat, dark blonde with too much gel, and his smile came in crooked, a thin little thing that never reached his pale eyes. He carried a yellow envelope in one hand. "Afternoon, Lana," he said. Lan's face did not change. "My name is Lan." The deputy smiled wider. "Sure." Bishop felt Atlas rise beside him. Not fast, not loud. Just up. The deputy glanced at the dog, then at Bishop, measuring him with the quick irritation of a man who disliked unexpected objects in a room he considered his own. "You passing through?" he asked. Bishop said nothing for half a second longer than politeness allowed. "Coffee?" he said. The deputy's jaw shifted. Lan placed both hands lightly on the counter. "Deputy Kessler, what can I do for you?" So that was his name. Dean Kessler set the yellow envelope on the counter and tapped it twice with 2 fingers. "Community security fee," he said. "Past due." The store went quiet in a way that was almost physical. Rosa's hand disappeared into her pocket around her folded envelope. Min stared at the floor. The little bell above the door still trembled from Kessler's entrance, but even that sound seemed to lose courage. Bishop looked at the envelope. No official seal that he could see from his chair. No printed county letterhead. Just block letters, a typed amount, and a red stamp that said overdue. Lan did not touch it. "We have discussed this," she said. Kessler leaned one elbow on the counter, casual as a wolf at a picnic. "And yet here we are." Atlas stepped half a pace forward. His body placed itself between Bishop's chair and the counter, but his eyes were on Kessler's hand. Bishop did not move. He did not need to. Something old in him had gone still. Not numb, not afraid. Still in the way deep water goes still before it takes a thing down. Kessler looked around the store, letting his gaze rest too long on Rosa, on Min, on the mother by the candy shelf, on the small camera above the register. "Folks around here like safe streets," he said. "Safe businesses, quick response times, no unnecessary inspections, no paperwork problems." Lan's chin lifted by the smallest degree. "This fee is not in county law." Kessler's smile thinned. Bishop felt the room inhale and hold it. He understood then that the envelope was not paper. It was a leash. And everyone in the market had felt it around their throat long before Bishop walked in. Atlas gave a low sound from deep in his chest. Not a bark, not an attack. A warning carved out of breath. Kessler's eyes snapped down to the dog. Bishop finally stood. The chair legs scraped softly against the floor. He was not sure yet what he was going to do, only what he would not do. He would not leave. Outside, the Alabama sun slipped behind a bank of clouds, and the clean front windows of Land's Market reflected 4 figures in a narrow room. An old woman behind a counter, a deputy with an envelope, a dog standing like a dark shield, and a former soldier who had spent years trying to come home, only to find that sometimes home was simply the place where you chose not to look away. Deputy Dean Kessler let the yellow envelope sit on the counter as if it had the authority of a court order. It did not. Even from where Bishop stood, he could see the cheapness of it. The paper was ordinary office stock, the red overdue stamp slightly crooked, the printed label too plain for county paperwork, no official seal, no reference number, no department header worth respecting. It was the kind of document that wore a costume and hoped frightened people would not look too closely. Lan Nguyen looked at it closely. That was the first thing Bishop noticed. She did not snatch it away. She did not tremble and plead. She did not perform the kind of fear Kessler had come to collect, along with the money. She only looked down at the envelope, then back up at him, her small hands resting on the counter near the red pen in her apron pocket. "This again," she said. Kessler smiled, showing the front of his teeth. "Afraid so, Lana. My name is Lan." "Right, Lan." He said it slowly, as if granting her a favor. "Community security fee, past due, 30 days. Rosa Delgado, near the detergent shelf, turned the bleach bottle in her hands until the plastic crackled. Min Tran stood by the cooler, cap pulled low, shoulders tight beneath his blue work shirt. The young mother who had been choosing candy for her children guided them gently behind her legs. The whole store became smaller. Kessler seemed to enjoy that. He rested one elbow on the counter and leaned in just enough to make it rude without making it obvious. "You know how this works. Businesses contribute. County keeps an eye on the area. Patrols come quicker. Inspectors stay friendly. Everybody sleeps better." "I sleep fine," Lan said. That was not true. Bishop could see it in the thin skin beneath her eyes, in the way she had sorted receipts with the focus of someone keeping herself upright by routine. But the lie was not weakness. It was defiance wearing house slippers. Kessler chuckled. From Bishop's left, Atlas made no sound, but his posture changed. The German shepherd lowered his head slightly, amber eyes fixed not on Kessler's face, but on his hands. That was what trained dogs did when the room sharpened. They ignored the theater and watched the tools. Bishop stayed standing beside his chair. He felt the old machinery in his body come awake piece by piece. Breath slowed, weight balanced, eyes reading angles. Distance to the counter, distance to the front door, Rosa's position, Min's line of movement, the children behind their mother, Kessler's right hand near the envelope, left hand loose beside the duty belt. No one had asked Bishop to do anything. That mattered. A man who had once spent years being ordered into danger had learned, too late and too deeply, that stepping into another person's crisis could become its own kind of arrogance, especially when that person was small, old, female, accented, and already underestimated by everyone in the room. So Bishop watched Lan. If she wanted help, she would show it. Lan tapped the envelope with one finger and pushed it back toward Kessler. "This fee is not county law." The deputy's smile slipped, but only for a second. "It's county practice." "Practice is not law." Min's head lifted slightly. Rosa stopped turning the bleach bottle. Something faint passed through the store. Not courage yet, not even hope. Just surprise. The surprise of hearing someone say plainly what everyone else had only whispered in kitchens and parking lots. Kessler noticed it too. His eyes moved around the room, touching each person like a warning. Careful, there are a lot of ways a business can get itself reviewed. Fire code, food storage, imported goods, employee paperwork. His gaze settled on Min. Vehicle permits. Min looked down again. Kessler smiled as if he had just made a joke between friends. Bishop's jaw tightened. He had seen men like Kessler before. Not always in uniform, not always with a badge. Sometimes they wore suits, sometimes sandals, sometimes rings, medals, flags, scripture, rank. The costume changed. The hunger did not. They all knew how to make fear sound administrative. Lon reached into the pocket of her pale blue apron and removed a folded sheet of paper. She opened it carefully and placed it beside the envelope. "I filed a written complaint with the county administrator," she said. "I also requested the statute authorizing this payment. I received nothing." Kessler looked at the paper but did not touch it. "You've been busy. I own a store. I know paper. Maybe you know too much paper." The words landed softly, but the threat under them was hard. For the first time, Lon's fingers moved toward the small notebook in her apron pocket. Not all the way. Just enough that Bishop saw the habit. That pocket was not decoration. It was a vault she carried on her body. Kessler saw it too. His eyes narrowed. "There a reason you're keeping records on us, Mrs. Nguyen?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Lon folded the complaint again. "There is a reason I keep records on everyone who asks me for money." A sound escaped one of the children, a small, frightened breath. Kessler straightened. Now his pleasant act began to peel. "I'm going to need to see the file cabinet in the back." "No." "Excuse me?" "No," Lon repeated. "You have no warrant? You have no inspection notice? You have no legal paper? Only that?" She nodded at the envelope. "And that is not law." Bishop felt the moment tilt. It did not happen loudly. No music rose. No thunder broke. It was only a small old woman saying no to a man who had built an entire little kingdom on people saying yes before he finished asking. Atlas stepped forward half a pace. Bishop did not command him back. Kessler's eyes flicked to the dog. "You got a permit for that animal in a food establishment?" "He is with me," Bishop said. Kessler turned toward him fully for the first time. "And you are?" "Customer." "Customer with a military haircut." Bishop said nothing. Kessler let his gaze travel over Bishop's charcoal polo. Dark jeans, old boots, the scar near his eyebrow, the scratched tactical watch. His expression sharpened with the annoyance of a man discovering an obstacle he had not budgeted for. "You local?" "No." "Then enjoy your coffee." Bishop held his eyes. "I was." The line did not raise its voice, but it took up space. Lon glanced at Bishop, not asking, not thanking, measuring. Atlas remained between them all, a living hinge on which the room could still swing either way. Kessler turned back to the counter with a small laugh. "This is cute, real cute. Everybody wants to be brave when there's an audience." He moved around the end of the counter. Lon stepped back once. Not in surrender, in preparation. "Deputy," she said, "do not come behind my counter. I'm conducting a compliance check." "No, you are not." He reached toward the small, swinging gate that separated the front of the store from the narrow space behind the register. His hand closed around it and pushed. The gate squealed. That sound did something to Bishop. Not because it was loud, because it was familiar in the worst possible way. A hinge, a boundary opening, a line crossed. His body wanted to move before his judgment finished speaking. Atlas moved first. The German shepherd slid between the counter opening and Kessler with liquid precision, paused silent on the old linoleum. He did not lunge. He did not bark. He planted himself there, shoulders squared, head low, a low warning rising from his chest like distant machinery under the earth. Kessler froze. "Get that dog back." Bishop's voice came calm. "Then step back." Kessler's pale eyes flashed. "You giving me orders?" "No." Bishop took one step forward. "I'm giving you a choice." For a second, no one breathed. Then Lon did something no one expected. She reached down, picked up the paper bag she had given Bishop earlier, removed one dog biscuit, and placed it on the counter beside the yellow envelope. Kessler stared at her. Bishop stared too. Lon looked at Atlas and said gently, "Good boy, not yet." The dog did not take the biscuit. He did not look away from Kessler, but the moment changed. The biscuit sat beside the envelope like a small, absurd judgment. One thing made with care, one thing made from fear. One offered freely, one demanded under threat. Bishop felt the meaning of it before he could put it into words. Lan Nguyen, who had every reason to tremble, had just reminded the room that terror was not the only language available. Kessler hated it. His face flushed along the neck. "You think this is funny?" "No," Lon said. "I think you are in my store." Kessler stepped closer. This time, he did not reach for the cabinet. He reached for Lon. It was not a punch. It was not a dramatic assault. It was uglier in its everydayness. His hand caught the edge of her plum cardigan near the shoulder, bunching the fabric as he tried to pull her away from the counter. Lon stumbled once against the stool behind her. A tin of tea fell and burst open across the floor. The young child near the candy rack began to cry. Atlas surged forward just enough to fill the space. His teeth showed, a warning, bright and controlled. Kessler jerked back from the dog but did not release Lon's cardigan. Bishop crossed the distance in 3 steps. "Let go." Kessler turned his head. "Touch me and you'll regret it." "I said let go." "Former military, right?" Kessler sneered. "You people always think—" Bishop did not let him finish. He did not strike him. He did not throw him into shelves or slam him to the floor. He took Kessler's wrist with one hand, guided the thumb line outward, and applied just enough pressure to make the body obey what pride refused. Kessler's hand opened. Lan's cardigan came free. Bishop released him almost immediately and stepped back, palms visible. The whole movement lasted less than 3 seconds. No triumph, no spectacle, only a boundary restored. Kessler clutched his wrist, more humiliated than hurt. "You just assaulted a deputy." "No," Bishop said. "I stopped you from putting your hands on her." Rosa had moved to the children now, kneeling beside them, whispering something soft in Spanish. Min's phone was in his hand, though he looked terrified of using it. The mother held both children close. Behind the counter, Lon steadied herself with one hand on the register. Atlas remained in front of her. He was still showing teeth, but he had not crossed into attack. Bishop saw the restraint and felt a strange ache of pride. The dog understood something many men never learned. Strength did not have to spend itself to prove it existed. Kessler backed toward the door, then stopped as anger won over caution. "You think this ends here?" he said. "I can have 2 units outside in 5 minutes. I can shut this place down before supper. I can make every person in this room remember what happens when they interfere with county business." Lon smoothed the wrinkled front of her cardigan. Her hands were shaking now. She did not hide it. That moved Bishop more than if she had pretended she was made of stone. She bent slowly, picked up her fallen glasses from behind the counter, wiped them on the edge of her apron, and put them back on. Then she reached beneath the register, not hurriedly, not theatrically, and pressed something Bishop could not see. Kessler noticed. "What was that?" Lon opened a small drawer beneath the counter and removed a black leather sleeve. From inside it, she drew a laminated card with a federal seal and a line of text too small for Bishop to read from where he stood. Kessler read enough. The color changed in his face. Lan placed the card on the counter beside the yellow envelope and the untouched dog biscuit. "I am not an agent," she said. "So do not embarrass yourself by saying I pretended to be one." Kessler's mouth opened, then closed. "I am a protected confidential source in an active federal financial investigation," Lan continued. "The people responsible know I am in contact with IRS criminal investigation. This store has recorded your visit. So has the line I opened before you came behind my counter." The silence that followed was different from the silence before. The first silence had belonged to fear. This one belonged to consequence. Kessler stared at the card. His eyes darted to the camera above the register, then to Bishop, then to Atlas, then to the customers who had seen too much to unsee it. "You have no idea what you're doing," he said. Lan's voice remained soft. "I know exactly what numbers do when men think old women do not understand them." For a moment, Bishop saw the full shape of her, not merely the owner of a roadside market, not merely a small woman in a crooked apron, but a ledger with a heartbeat, a keeper of names, a person who had spent months gathering paper against men who used badges as shields. Kessler stepped backward. The bell above the door waited behind him. "You better hope your federal friends arrive before mine," he said. He turned and left. The bell rang when the door opened, then again when it closed. Outside, his boots hit the porch hard. The patrol car door slammed. The engine started, idled, then pulled away in a spit of gravel. No one inside Lan's market moved for several seconds. Then the child near Rosa sniffled. Atlas finally lowered his head. Lan exhaled, and the sound was so small Bishop might have missed it if the whole store had not been listening. She picked up the dog biscuit from the counter and offered it again. This time Atlas looked at Bishop. Bishop nodded once. Atlas took it gently from her fingers. Lan's hand lingered for a moment on the dog's head, just behind the nicked right ear. "Good boy," she whispered. Bishop looked at the yellow envelope still lying on the counter. It seemed smaller now, but not harmless. Lan slid the federal card back into its sleeve and tucked it away. When she looked up at Bishop, the warmth from earlier was still there, but behind it stood something older and harder. "I am sorry your coffee got cold," she said. Bishop glanced toward the road where the patrol car had disappeared. It wasn't very good hot. Rosa let out a shaky laugh that almost became a sob. Min covered his mouth and turned away, pretending to cough. Even Lan's eyes softened for half a second. Then Bishop asked the question the room had been avoiding. "How long has he been doing this?" Lan looked at the envelope, then at the door, then at the people in her store. "Long enough," she said. And though Kessler was gone, Bishop understood the truth of the answer. The deputy had only been the hand. Somewhere beyond the dusty road, there was an arm, a shoulder, a body of power attached to him. And Lan Nguyen, with her crooked apron, her hidden card, and her trembling hands, had just shown that body where the first cut would be made. After Deputy Kessler left, Lan's market did not return to normal. The bell above the door had stopped trembling. The patrol car had vanished down the dusty road, and the yellow envelope still lay on the counter like a dead insect no one wanted to touch. Yet the fear it had brought remained in the room, clinging to the shelves, the rice sacks, the faces of the people who had seen too much and spoken too little. Rosa Delgado gathered her bleach bottle and folded envelope with hands that wanted to hurry but did not want to look afraid. She kissed 2 fingers and touched them to Lan's hand before leaving. "Call me if you need anything," Rosa whispered. Lan gave her a look over the top of her glasses. You say this as if you sleep. Rosa gave a cracked smile. Nobody with a laundromat sleeps. Even Bishop could tell the joke was something they offered each other because the alternative was silence. Min Tran stayed a moment longer by the cooler, pretending to read the label on a soda can. His jaw worked as if he had words trapped behind his teeth. At last, he walked to the counter, placed $2 beside the register for nothing he had bought, and murmured, "Camera in my truck works sometimes. Not always, but sometimes." Lan's face softened. "I know. If you need—" Min stopped there. Men like him, Bishop thought, often survived by not finishing sentences in public. Lan nodded once. "Go home, Min. Kiss your daughter for me." He left through the front door without looking back at the road. Only after the last customer had gone did Lan turn the small sign from open to closed. She locked the door, lowered one blind halfway, and stood for a moment, with her hand on the brass key ring hanging from her apron pocket. Bishop watched her from near the coffee counter. Atlas stood between them, not tense now, but not settled either. His amber eyes moved from the front door to the hallway behind the register. "Mrs. Nguyen," Bishop said, "you should call your federal contact." Lan looked at him. Already did. Bishop glanced toward the register. "The line you opened?" "Yes." "With who?" "Someone who has better coffee than mine and worse hours." It was not an answer. It was enough of one. Lan picked up the yellow envelope with 2 fingers and dropped it into a clear plastic bag from beneath the counter. She sealed it, wrote the time on the front with her red pen, and placed it in a cardboard box already marked with dates. Bishop noticed there were many bags in that box. Too many. Lan followed his gaze. "You came for coffee," she said. "Now you look like a man who accidentally stepped into paperwork." "Paperwork kills more people than bullets," Bishop said. Lan paused, then gave him a thin, approving smile. "Good. You are not stupid. I have references who might disagree." That earned him a small laugh, but the laugh faded quickly. Lan reached under the counter and pressed a latch hidden behind a strip of tape. A narrow panel in the wooden shelving clicked open, revealing a keyhole. She used one of the brass keys from her apron and unlocked the door behind the register. "Come," she said. Bishop did not move immediately. Lan saw the hesitation. "I am not asking you to become involved," she said, "only to understand why that man was so angry." Bishop looked down at Atlas. The dog had already started forward. "Traitor," Bishop muttered again. Atlas ignored him with professional grace. The room behind Lan's market was smaller than Bishop expected. Not a secret bunker, not a dramatic hideout. It was a tired office with an old computer, a humming mini-fridge, a metal filing cabinet, a calendar from a Vietnamese bakery in Mobile, and a table covered with folders, envelopes, receipts, printed spreadsheets, rubber bands, sticky notes, and 2 mugs of ginger tea gone cold. A faded photograph sat in a wooden frame near the lamp. A younger Lan stood beside a thin man with kind eyes in front of the same market, both of them holding a pair of oversized scissors and laughing at a ribbon cutting no one important had attended. The sign above them looked new then. The paint fresh. The windows full of mourning. Lan caught Bishop looking. "My husband," she said. "Than. He believed every store should open with clean glass, even if nobody comes in." Bishop said nothing, but something in the picture unsettled him. Not sadness exactly. More like the proof of a world that had once been whole enough for small ceremonies. Lan moved the photo half an inch to the left. as if restoring order to memory itself, then pulled out a chair. "You sit," she said. "I'm fine." "You are large. The room is small. Sit before you intimidate my printer." Bishop sat. The chair complained under him. Lon poured fresh hot water over ginger slices in 2 chipped mugs. She handed one to Bishop and set a small bowl of water on the floor for Atlas. The dog drank, but his eyes never stopped reading the room. On the table, the folders were labeled in careful block letters: Delgado Laundry, Tran Ovac, Golden Nails, Riverbend Market, Gulf County Seafood and Cold Storage. Bishop pointed at the last one. "Seafood?" Lon settled into the chair across from him. Under the fluorescent light, she looked smaller but not weaker. The office seemed to belong to her in a way the store did not. Out, she was a shopkeeper. Back here, she was a judge in a kingdom of paper. "On paper," she said. "Gulf County Seafood closed 6 years ago. No employees, no fresh tax filings except minimum corporate maintenance. But last year, it billed more than $200,000 in cold storage, transport, security coordination, and cash handling to small businesses in this county. Businesses like yours. Businesses like mine. Like Rosa's Laundromat. Like Min's Repair Company. Like nail salons. Produce stands. A bakery. A small church food pantry once." Her mouth tightened at that. "They do not even have shame with God's rice." Bishop looked at the folders. "And the deputy collects. Kessler collects. Others pressure, the money moves." Lan tapped one spreadsheet. "Small payments, always small enough to feel cheaper than fighting. 300 here, 500 there. Sometimes more if they think you are afraid." Bishop thought of the envelope. The red stamp, the way Rosa's hand had hidden her own folded paper. "Protection racket," he said. Lan's eyes sharpened. "Yes, but dressed in county shoes." She opened a folder and turned it toward him. Bishop saw copies of invoices, bank deposit slips, county complaint forms, and handwritten notes in Lan's neat, narrow script. Dates, names, amounts, license plate fragments, weather, who was present, what was said. "You kept all this?" "I was a tax preparer for 28 years, Lan said. "People lie with faces. Numbers are lazier. They repeat themselves." It was such a strange, precise sentence that Bishop looked at her differently. Not as the old woman Kessler had tried to push around. Not even as the brave shopkeeper who had refused to bow. But as a patient hunter who did not carry a weapon because her prey had already left footprints in ink. Lan turned to another folder. "The first one who came to me was Mrs. Bui from Golden Nails. They charged her a security fee. She refused. 2 weeks later, inspectors came 3 times in 1 month. Then her landlord raised rent because a developer made an offer for the whole strip. She lost the salon before Christmas. Coincidence? Men like Hollis build homes out of coincidence." Bishop heard the name land. "Hollis." "Sheriff Wade Hollis." Lan's voice went flat. "Running for a 4th term, good smile, big handshakes, says red clay must grow without losing its roots." "What does that mean?" "It means he wants the roots removed quietly." She showed Bishop a local newspaper clipping. Sheriff Hollis stood at a podium beside 3 men in suits, all smiling in front of a banner for something called the Red Clay Development Initiative. Behind the polished words was a proposal for a logistics center, truck stop expansion, and casino-style entertainment complex at the edge of town. It would need land. Cheap land. Bishop looked at the list of targeted businesses. "You think they're forcing people out?" I think they are squeezing immigrants who cannot afford lawyers until they sell. Then the land becomes clean. The money becomes clean. The men become generous donors. Lon closed the folder. America is very good at washing things. Clothes, money, history. The words held no bitterness for show, only tired accuracy. Bishop leaned back, his mug untouched. He had expected some dirty local shakedown, ugly but simple. This was not simple. This had ledgers, campaign money, land, shell companies, a dead seafood business still breathing on paper, and a sheriff who knew exactly which people would hesitate before calling a lawyer. Atlas moved quietly to Lon's chair. He lowered himself beside her feet. Lon looked down. For the first time since they entered the office, her face changed completely. The hard accountant vanished. The shopkeeper returned. Then something older than both appeared. A woman who had carried too much alone and had just been seen by someone who asked nothing from her. Atlas placed his muzzle on the toe of her brown shoe. Lan's hand went still above his head. Then, very carefully, she touched the silvering at his chin. "You know," she whispered, "some dogs do not only smell food or fear or storms. Some dogs smell when a person is tired of pretending." Bishop looked away. Not fast enough. Lan saw it. She did not push. That was her mercy. The old computer on the desk chimed before Bishop could answer. Lan turned toward the screen. A secure video call window blinked with a name. M. Ellison. Lan clicked once. A woman appeared on the screen, seated inside a dark vehicle. She had brown skin, dark hair pulled low at the back of her neck, and a face that looked too awake for someone working out of a parked car near sunset. Her blazer was charcoal, her shirt slate blue, and the glow from the laptop made her eyes look sharper than the image quality deserved. Bishop saw a small black notebook open on the steering wheel beside her, tabbed with colored strips. "Lon," the woman said, "tell me exactly what happened." Lon looked at Bishop. "This is Special Agent Mara Ellison," she said. "IRS Criminal Investigation." Mara's eyes moved to Bishop through the screen. "And you are?" "Bishop Callahan." "Are you law enforcement?" "No." "Armed?" Bishop paused. "No." Mara studied him for one more beat. "Good, stay that way." Bishop almost liked her. Lon summarized Kessler's visit with the discipline of a witness who understood the value of sequence. Time. Words used. Position behind the counter. The envelope. The threat. Bishop's intervention. The exposed federal source card. Mara listened without interrupting, except to ask exact questions. Did he touch the file cabinet? No. Did he see the rear lock? Maybe. Did you mention tomorrow? No. Did anyone else hear the call connect? Possibly. He noticed when I pressed the line. Mara's expression did not change, but the air on the screen seemed to tighten. Then assume they know we're close. Bishop leaned forward slightly. Who is they? Mara's eyes cut to him. People with more patience than Deputy Kessler and better lawyers. Lon removed a small black USB drive from a tin of tea bags and set it on the table. It was wrapped in a rubber band with a folded note. This is the latest reconciliation, she said. Mara's voice softened. You were supposed to move that tomorrow morning. I still will. No, Bishop said before he meant to. Both women looked at him. He regretted speaking, then did not. If Kessler came in that hot today, tomorrow morning is obvious. Mara said, I'm aware. Then don't make her carry it alone. Lon's eyes cooled. I have carried many things alone, Mr. Callahan. I know. No, she said. You do not. The room went quiet. Bishop accepted the correction. A younger version of him might have defended himself. This one had learned that pain did not give a man ownership over all suffering. You're right, he said. I don't. Lan looked at him for a long moment. Mara glanced between them, impatient but not unkind. The USB contains the cross-match? Lan nodded. Invoices from Gulf County Seafood. Deposits into the Hollis Campaign Support Pass. Property options signed by Red Clay Development, and duplicate payments listed as security consulting. Enough for a warrant? Enough to make someone afraid of a warrant, Lan said. Mara did not smile, but something close to respect moved across her face. I'm requesting additional support. Not through the sheriff's office. I'll call you back in 20 minutes. Until then, lock the rear entrance. Keep the lights normal. Do not move the USB unless I tell you. The call ended. The office hummed. Outside, a truck rolled past on the road, slow enough that its tires made the gravel speak. Atlas lifted his head. Bishop noticed the dog before Lan did. Then the small monitor above the desk flickered. It showed 4 grainy camera feeds: front door, register, side alley, rear parking space. For a second, all 4 remained steady. Then the rear alley feed blurred with static, cleared, blurred again. Lan stood. That camera is new, she said. The rear feed showed her old sedan parked beneath the yellow security light behind the building. The trunk was closed. The alley was empty. But the image jumped once more, and in that broken second, Bishop saw the faint reflection of something moving beyond the edge of the frame. Not a person. Not clearly. Just a pale shape passing where no shape should be. Atlas was fully upright now. His body faced the back hallway. A low sound began in his chest. Not the controlled warning he had given Kessler, but something quieter, more uncertain. A question made of muscle and breath. Lan reached for the drawer where the USB lay. Bishop's hand came down lightly on the table, not touching her, just stopping the motion before it became panic. Don't, he said. She looked at him. If someone's watching, Bishop said, let them think it's still where it was. Lan's fingers hovered. Then she withdrew her hand. For the first time, the 3 of them, old woman, former soldier, and dog, were not simply reacting to the same danger. They were beginning to share it. The camera feed snapped clear again. The alley remained empty. Lan exhaled through her nose. Maybe bad wire. Bishop looked at Atlas. Atlas did not sit down. No, Bishop said, not wire. On the desk, beside the humming old computer, the black USB drive sat among tea tins and tax papers, small enough to disappear in a fist, small enough to make powerful men afraid. Lan picked up her red pen and wrote the time on a sticky note. 6:42 p.m. Then she placed the note beside the USB and looked at Bishop with the weary dignity of someone who had stepped too far into the river to pretend her shoes were dry. Mr. Callahan, she said, now you understand why Deputy Kessler wanted my cabinet. Bishop looked at the frozen rear camera image, at Atlas standing in the doorway, at the old photograph of Lan and her husband beneath the market sign when hope still looked freshly painted. Yes, he said. And in the yellow light behind the store, unseen by the camera for just one more second, something moved again near Lan's car. Bishop Callahan did not decide to stay because he believed he could save anyone. That would have been too clean a story, and Bishop no longer trusted clean stories. He stayed because when a man had seen a hand reach for an old woman and had watched a whole store hold its breath, Driving away became its own kind of cowardice. He stayed because Atlas would not settle. He stayed because Lan Nguyen, after revealing enough truth to make dangerous men afraid, still turned off her front lights with the tired precision of a shopkeeper closing for the night. The world did not pause for courage. It had to be swept, locked, and inventoried. Lan moved through the market with a small basket hooked over one arm, collecting things customers had left in the wrong places. A can of peaches returned to the canned goods shelf, a bottle of bleach placed back with the laundry soap, 2 candy bars removed from behind the rice sacks, where some child had abandoned temptation for later. Bishop checked the front door twice, then the rear door, then the alley window. He did it with the quiet thoroughness of a man who had learned long ago that locks were not promises, only arguments. "Do you always make buildings nervous?" Lan asked from behind the counter. Bishop tested the rear deadbolt again. "Only the ones with bad hinges. That door has been bad since 1998. Then it's consistent." Lan made a sound that might have been amusement. "Consistency is rare. We keep it." Atlas lay in the narrow space between the back hallway and the counter, his body placed where he could see both the office door and the front windows. The silver at his muzzle caught the low light whenever he lifted his head. He was no longer tense in the way he had been with Kessler. This was different. This was waiting. And waiting, Bishop knew, could be harder than fighting. Special Agent Mara Ellison had called twice after the video feed flickered. The second call had been shorter. "Stay visible. Do not move the USB again. Do not use the sheriff's office. I'll arrive at first light with another agent and a secure evidence transfer." Lan had listened, nodded, and then asked if Mara had eaten. Mara, on the speaker, had gone silent for half a beat before answering, "No." "Then you are not thinking clearly," Lan had said. Bishop had almost smiled at that. Almost. Now, close to midnight, the market wore a different face. The shelves became taller in the dark. The glass jars reflected small ghosts of movement. The road outside had gone quiet except for the occasional hiss of a passing truck. Rain had not fallen, but the air had thickened with the promise of it. Lan made tea in the back office, not because anyone needed tea, because her hands needed something honest to do. Bishop sat in the chair closest to the wall, where he could see the rear hallway through the half-open office door. He had tried to take the chair by the desk, but Lan had pointed at the wall chair and said, "You will sit there anyway. Save time." She was not wrong. On the table between them sat the old photograph of Lan and her husband on opening day. The younger Lan in the picture looked almost startled by happiness, as if joy had arrived early and found her still arranging the shelves. Beside her, Than Nguyen held the ribbon-cutting scissors with both hands, laughing. "He worked at the mill," Lan said, noticing Bishop's eyes on the frame. "Outside town, cut lumber, stacked boards, fixed machines nobody wanted to fix. He came home with sawdust in his hair every night." Bishop held the warm mug between his hands. He had not taken a sip. "He built this place? Some of it? The counter, the back shelves, that crooked rack with the potato chips? He said if America would not give us a palace, he would build me a kingdom with plywood." The words made Bishop look toward the store. A kingdom with plywood. It should have sounded small. Somehow it did not. Lan touched the edge of the picture frame. When we opened, there were only 3 Vietnamese families within 30 miles. 1 Lao family. 2 Mexican families we knew. People came because they wanted fish sauce, rice, chili oil. Then they came because they wanted to speak without translating themselves first. Her voice did not break. It aged. After Thon died, everyone told me to sell. Too much work, too many taxes, too many men with forms. But this store—" She looked through the office doorway toward the dark aisles. "This store remembers people correctly." Bishop understood that more than he wanted to. There were names he carried because the world had stopped saying them. Men reduced to folded flags, old photographs, benefits forms, dates on metal plaques. He did not talk about them. Talking made them smaller. Lan, somehow, had built shelves for hers. Atlas rose from the hallway and came into the office. He did not go to Bishop. Instead, he walked to Lan's chair and sat beside it. Not leaning, not demanding attention, just there. Lan looked down at him. "You see?" she said softly. "This one understands property value." Bishop frowned. "Property value?" "He knows the best place in the room." The laugh came out of Bishop before he could stop it. Quiet, rusted, but real. For one strange, the night let go of their throats. Then the phone rang. Not Lan's cell. The market landline. Its sound cut through the office, sharp and old-fashioned, a bell from another era. Lan looked at Bishop. Bishop looked at the security monitor. Atlas turned toward the front of the store. Lan answered on speaker. "Lan's market." A man's voice crackled through, urgent and breathless. "Fire reported at Wallace Feed Storage. County Road 7. Caller says smoke behind the building. Dispatch is routing units." Lan's eyes narrowed. "Why are you calling me?" A pause. "Ma'am, your number is listed as emergency contact for adjacent property records." "That building is 4 miles away." Another pause. Too long. The line clicked dead. Bishop stood. Lan slowly set the receiver back into its cradle. That was not dispatch. No. On the monitor, the rear alley camera held steady. The front camera showed an empty road. The side camera showed wind moving a plastic bag against the fence. Atlas went to the back hallway and stopped. Bishop checked his watch. 12:17 a.m. He did not like the number. He did not like the call. He did not like the way the world outside had become too quiet after it. Lan reached for the drawer where the USB had been hidden earlier. Bishop stopped her with a look. She withdrew her hand. A faint tremor moved through her fingers. "I should have given it to Mara tonight," she said. "You made the safest call with what you knew." "Safe calls are for people with time." He had no answer for that. They did not sleep. Lan dozed for perhaps 20 minutes in the office chair, one hand still on the apron pocket where her red pen and small notebook rested. Bishop sat by the wall and listened to the building. Pipes ticking, fridge motor humming, Atlas breathing, a car somewhere far away. The little market settling into itself like an old ship. Sometime after 2, rain finally touched the roof. Not hard, just a thin whisper. Atlas lifted his head once, then lowered it again. By 3, the rear camera had flickered twice but shown nothing. By 4, the road was gray and wet under the security lights. By 5, the world began preparing to lie and call itself morning. Lan rose first. "I will make coffee," she said. Bishop did not tell her not to. Some rituals kept people from falling through the floor. He stepped into the rear hallway with Atlas and opened the back door. The air outside smelled of wet dust, old oil, and pine bark. Lan's sedan sat beneath the yellow security light, beads of rain clinging to the roof and windshield. At first, Bishop saw nothing wrong. Then Atlas stopped at the threshold. His body went still. Bishop's hand lowered beside him. "What is it?" Atlas moved forward slowly, nose low. The sedan's rear passenger window had a thin white line running through one corner. Not shattered, not dramatic, just cracked, neat, and mean. The weather stripping around the door had been lifted and pressed back badly. Whoever had done it had known how to avoid noise. Lan appeared behind Bishop with 2 paper cups of coffee. She saw the window. The cups slipped from her hands. They hit the concrete and burst open, dark coffee spreading across the wet ground like a small map no one wanted to read. Bishop said, "Stay back." But Lan was already moving, not fast, not foolish, simply unable to remain standing where ignorance still had mercy. She opened the rear door. The glove compartment was closed. The seats were undisturbed. The old blanket was still folded. For half a second, Bishop thought perhaps the thief had failed. Then Lan reached beneath the loose panel behind the rear seat. Her hand found emptiness. She stood there with her arm inside the hidden compartment. Her face turned away from Bishop, her body suddenly smaller than it had been the night before. "No," she said. It was not a cry. It was worse. Bishop stepped closer. Lan pulled her hand out slowly. Her fingers were dusty and bare. "The transfer packet," she said. "The paper match set. The drive copy. You said the original records are elsewhere." "Yes," she swallowed. "But this copy links them. It puts Gulf County Seafood, the campaign fund, the development company, and Hollis in the same chain. Without it, Mara still has pieces. Too many pieces. Men like Hollis survive pieces." Atlas circled the car once. He did not whine. He did not bark. He worked. His nose traveled along the cracked window, down the door seam, over the rear tire, then to the ground beneath the bumper. There a thin puddle had gathered in a shallow crack in the concrete. Atlas lowered his muzzle to it, inhaled, and froze. Bishop crouched beside him. The smell reached him faintly, even through the wet air. Diesel, old metal, something cold and briny under it. Fish, not fresh fish, industrial cold, refrigerated rot. Lan stared at the puddle. Seafood. Bishop looked toward the alley. Atlas followed the scent to the edge of the lot, then to the gravel behind the market where tire marks had darkened the rain-soft clay. One set of tracks was deeper than the others, wide at the rear, as if made by a truck carrying weight. A voice called from the side street. "Mrs. Lan?" A boy stood there with a bundle of newspapers under one arm, and a bicycle leaned against his hip. He could not have been more than 14, thin as a fence rail, red hair flattened under a plastic rain hood, freckles bright across his nose even in the gray morning. His knees were muddy, and his eyes had the anxious honesty of a child who had seen something adult and wished he had not. Lan turned. "Caleb, why are you here so early?" "Route," he said, then looked at Bishop and Atlas. "I didn't steal nothing." "No one said you did," Bishop said. The boy relaxed about 1 inch. "I saw a truck," Caleb said. "Last night, around 2, maybe. Cold truck, like for meat or fish. It came slow through the alley with lights off, then turned them on near the road." He dug an old phone from his jacket pocket. "I tried to record because my uncle says Hollis trucks been using roads they shouldn't. It's blurry." He handed the phone to Lan, then seemed to remember adults sometimes took things and did not give them back. "Careful, screens cracked." Lan played the video. Darkness. Rain. The shaking edge of a bicycle handlebar. Then a pale truck shape moved across the frame at the far end of the alley. On its side, for less than a second, Bishop saw letters washed by streetlight and rain. Gulf Co. The rest vanished into blur. Lan lowered the phone. Bishop looked at Atlas, still standing at the tire tracks. The dog's gaze had fixed on the old county road beyond the market. the one that curved away from town instead of toward it. A pickup slowed near the front of the store. Min Tran leaned out the driver's window, hair wet, blue work shirt wrinkled under an open jacket. He looked from the cracked sedan window to Lan's face and understood enough to park badly and hurry over. "I saw that truck last night," Min said before anyone asked. "Old refrigerated box. Gulf County logo painted over, but not good. It passed my place after 2, I thought." He stopped, guilt tightening his mouth. "I thought it was better not to notice." Lan looked at him with no accusation. "Many people survive by not noticing," she said. Min's eyes reddened. "I'm tired of surviving like that." There it was. Not heroism. Exhaustion becoming courage. Bishop felt the shift like a match struck in a damp room. He took out his phone and called Mara. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me." "The packet's gone," Bishop said. "Vehicle entry, no confrontation, window compromised. Atlas has a scent, diesel, cold storage, fish. A kid has partial video of a Gulf County refrigerated truck around 2. Min Tran saw the same vehicle. Mara did not curse. That made Bishop trust her more. "Do not call county dispatch," she said. "Wasn't planning to. I'm bringing in state police support. One captain only for now, Joel Mercer. He's clean." Lan took the phone from Bishop. "Mara, if they have the packet—" "They don't have your head," Mara said, "and they don't have the full archive. Breathe." Lan closed her eyes. For a moment, she looked every one of her 72 years. Then Atlas moved. He stepped into the road, tugging the leash Bishop had clipped on without remembering when. Not hard, not frantic. Certain. Bishop followed his line. The old county road ran east past abandoned sheds, a shuttered mechanic shop, and beyond that, if the faded map in Bishop's head was right, the industrial strip outside town. "Where does that road go?" he asked. Min answered. "Old cold storage." Lan looked at Bishop. No one said Gulf County seafood. They did not need to. Mara's voice came through the phone, sharp now. "Bishop, you are not law enforcement. I know. You do not enter that property. I heard you. That is not the same as agreeing." Bishop looked at Atlas. The German shepherd stood in the wet red clay, sable coat darkened by morning rain, nicked ear forward, nose aimed toward the road where the truck had vanished. He was not chasing a file. He was holding a line that ran from Lan's trembling hand to Rose's folded envelope. From Min's shame to Caleb's blurry video, from a dead man's plywood kingdom to a town that had been trained to look away. Bishop felt the old war rise in him. Then, for once, he did not obey it. He did not reach for rage. He did not imagine punishment. He did not become the weapon other men had once needed him to be. He simply took a breath. "We wait for Mara," he said. Lan looked surprised. Maybe he was too. Atlas tugged once more, then stopped, as if accepting the order, but not the urgency. Bishop crouched beside him and placed one hand on the dog's wet neck. "Not yet," he whispered. The same words Lan had used the day before. Atlas held still. Behind them, the cracked window of Lan's sedan caught the first pale light of morning. The market sign creaked softly above the back door. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled without rain. The evidence was gone. But the trail was not. And for the first time since Kessler had walked into Lan's market, the fear in Bishop's chest had a direction. Gulf County seafood and cold storage sat beyond the eastern edge of Red Clay Crossing, where the county road narrowed and the town seemed to run out of breath. The building had once been white. Years of rain, mildew, and sun had turned it the color of old bone. Kudzu climbed one side of the loading dock, swallowing a rusted sign that still showed the faded outline of a fish leaping over blue letters. A chain-link fence leaned inward as if tired of keeping secrets. Beyond it, weeds grew through the cracked concrete in stubborn green fists. On paper, the company had been dead for 6 years. But dead companies did not send invoices. Dead companies did not charge immigrant-owned stores for cold storage, transport, security coordination, and cash handling. Dead companies did not have refrigerated trucks moving through back alleys at 2 in the morning. Bishop parked his pickup behind Mara Ellison's dark sedan, 50 yards from the gate. He kept both hands visible on the wheel until Mara finished speaking with the state police captain beside her vehicle. He had learned a long time ago that in tense places, the first gift a man could give was not surprise. Captain Joel Mercer stood with a phone pressed to one ear and a folded paper map spread across the hood of Mara's car. He was lean, early 50s, in a gray Alabama State Police uniform half hidden beneath a dark blue jacket. A short, salt and pepper mustache sat over a mouth that seemed built for saying no to people who expected yes. His campaign hat rested on the car hood beside the map, held down by an old silver fountain pen. Mercer ended the call and looked at Bishop. "You Callahan?" "Yes." "Former Navy?" "Yes." Mercer studied him just long enough to make the question unnecessary. "Are you going to be a problem?" Bishop answered it anyway. "I'm here because the dog followed the scent and because Mrs. Nguyen trusts me. I won't touch evidence. I won't enter anywhere you tell me not to enter." Mercer's eyes flicked to Atlas, who stood beside Bishop's leg, rain-dark sable fur catching the gray morning light. "That dog trained?" "Yes." "For evidence?" "For staying alive?" Bishop said. Then, after a beat, "And some scent work." Mercer gave a grunt that might have been approval in a language too old for compliments. Mara closed the trunk of her sedan. She had changed from the dark blazer of the night before into a weatherproof jacket over her slate blue shirt, but the small black notebook with colored tabs was still in her hand. Her expression had the sharpened calm of someone who had slept badly and chosen usefulness over complaint. "We have permission to secure the exterior based on reported theft, witness video, and possible evidence destruction," she said. "Full search authority is thin unless we find clear probable cause from outside or an unlocked commercial entry with exigent risk." Lan Nguyen stood beside Min Tran near the fence. Her plum cardigan had been replaced by a heavier gray coat over her pale blue apron, as if she had refused to come without the uniform of her own kingdom. Min carried a flashlight and his old HVAC tool bag, though Mercer had already told him twice he was not fixing anything. Lan looked at the abandoned building. "So much paperwork," she said quietly, "all to hide in a place that smells like old fish." Mara glanced at her. "You should have stayed at the market." "And miss seeing which ghost took my files?" "You're not entering unless I clear it." Lan gave her a look that had probably corrected generations of careless children, late customers, and grown men with bad excuses. Mara held the look for 1 second, then sighed. "Please," she added. Lan nodded. "Better." Bishop almost smiled. The smallness of the exchange helped. The place itself did not. Atlas had been still since they arrived. Not relaxed, not uncertain. Focused. His nose moved through the damp air, sorting the world into messages. Diesel. Rust. Wet concrete. Mold. Old refrigeration chemicals. Pine mud. Human leather. Rain. Then he pulled gently toward the side fence. Bishop looked to Mara. She nodded. Stay outside the fence until Mercer checks the gate. The padlock on the main gate looked old, but the chain around it did not. Mercer photographed it, then tested the gate with gloved hands. It opened. Lock staged, he said, not secured. Mara took a picture. Everyone stay behind me. They moved through the gate in a narrow line. Mercer first, Mara beside him, Bishop with Atlas, then Lon and Min several steps back. The abandoned yard held puddles that reflected the broken loading dock. Old pallets lay stacked beneath a collapsed awning. A blue plastic barrel rolled slightly in the wind, with a hollow knock that made Lon tighten her grip on her keyring. Atlas led them toward a wide roll-up door on the east side. The door was closed, but not sealed. Fresh scrape marks showed near the bottom where metal had dragged against concrete. Atlas lowered his head and sniffed along the gap. Then he pawed once at the floor and looked back at Bishop. Not frantic, certain. Mara crouched and shined her light beneath the door. Tire residue, mud transfer, recent. Mercer found a side personnel door 10 feet away. It hung on a damaged latch. Unlocked, he said. Mara's jaw tightened. Body cameras on. Bishop looked at her. She said, You stay behind me, dog on leash. If I say back, you go back. Understood. The door opened with a metallic groan. The smell came first. It rolled out cold and stale, though the building's power had been off for years. Old fish, wet cardboard, machine oil, rust, and the sour ghost of a place designed to keep things from rotting, but not from being forgotten. Lan covered her nose with her sleeve. Min whispered something in Vietnamese that Bishop did not understand, but the tone needed no translation. Inside, the cold storage building swallowed sound. Their flashlights cut through long corridors lined with insulated metal doors. Some hung open, revealing empty chambers with stained floors and broken plastic curtains. Condensation dripped somewhere deep inside, one drop at a time, patient as a clock. The air had a bite to it that did not belong to Alabama morning. Bishop felt his shoulders tighten. He hated buildings like this. Not because they were dangerous, because they were honest about it. Atlas moved ahead at the end of the leash, nose low. He passed 2 open chambers without stopping. At the third, he paused, then continued. At a loading bay, he turned sharply left. There, beneath a gray tarp, sat the refrigerated box truck. The truck was backed against the dock, its rear tires sunk slightly into damp grime. The Gulf County logo had been painted over on one side, but rain and age had peeled enough paint to reveal the ghost of blue letters underneath. Gulf Co. Caleb's blurry video had not lied. Mara photographed the truck from 3 angles. Mercer circled it, checking plates, doors, and ground disturbance. Min, unable to help himself, pointed toward the refrigeration unit. That compressor housing has newer bolts, he said. Mercer looked at him. Min lifted both hands. Not touching, just saying. Mara gave him a short nod. Useful saying. The rear latch was closed but not locked. Mercer opened it. Inside were plastic crates, bundled cardboard, and several sealed bins marked with fake delivery labels. Mara climbed onto the lift gate first. Her flashlight passed over stacks of invoices, photocopied business licenses, deposit slips, and small ledgers with initials instead of full names. Lon made a sound behind Bishop. He turned. She was staring at a clear evidence-style pouch, wedged between 2 crates. Bishop recognized the paper inside before she spoke. My transfer packet. Mara put on fresh gloves and lifted it carefully. The outer folder had been opened. The rubber band was missing. The black USB drive was still there, wrapped in its note, but several paper sections had been removed. Mara laid the contents on the liftgate and checked them against Lan's handwritten index. Cross-match spreadsheet copy, Mara said. Present. Gulf County invoices, partial. Deposit slips, partial. Business license copies, present. Hollis campaign support, PIC transfer summary, missing. Lan's face tightened. And the development company options? She asked. Mara looked once more. Missing. The air went heavier. Bishop did not need the explanation this time. The thieves had not taken everything because everything was not equally dangerous. They had stripped out the pages that tied Sheriff Wade Hollis directly to the money and the land. Leave enough behind, and the theft could look messy. Take the spine, and the body collapsed. Lan reached for the truck. Mara caught her wrist gently before she touched anything. Lan. The old woman froze. For the first time that morning, anger broke through her grief. They took the names, she said. Mara's voice softened. Some of them. No. The names that make rich men afraid. Bishop watched her hand in Mara's. Small, trembling, stained faintly with ink from years of receipts. A hand that had packed lunches, counted change, opened doors, sorted tax forms, turned a key in the morning even when the world outside had not earned the courtesy. Lan pulled her hand back and stepped away from the truck. Then she did something that stayed with Bishop. She straightened her apron, not the coat, not her hair. The apron. She smoothed the pale blue fabric over her front, tugged the crooked pocket back into place, touched the red pen, the plastic-wrapped notebook, and the brass keys. It was a small motion, almost ridiculous in the belly of an abandoned cold storage building. But Bishop understood. A uniform did not have to be issued by a government to matter. Some uniforms were chosen every morning by people who refused to disappear. Atlas turned then, leaving the truck for the first time. He came back to Lan and pressed his shoulder lightly against her knee. She looked down at him and nodded once. All right, she whispered. We are not finished. Bishop felt the words settle inside him. Not as command, as permission. Mara bagged the recovered evidence and marked each item. Mercer found a trail of wet boot prints leading from the truck toward a corridor lined with freezer rooms. They followed carefully, lights moving over rusted hinges and strips of hanging plastic that whispered when disturbed. Halfway down the corridor, Bishop stopped. The cold changed. It was not temperature exactly. It was memory wearing temperature as a mask. The corridor narrowed around him. The metal walls reflected the flashlights in hard streaks. Somewhere ahead, a heavy door shifted in the wind and struck its frame. Once, then again. A hollow metal boom, Bishop's throat closed. For a second, the cold storage building was not in Alabama. The smell of fish became diesel and dust. The dripping water became static. The hanging plastic became torn fabric in a doorway he had not reached in time. His hand tightened around Atlas's leash until the nylon bit into his palm. He knew he was standing. He knew he was breathing. He also knew some part of him had fallen backward years. Callahan? Mara's voice came from far away. He could not answer. The metal door struck again. Atlas came into him hard, not enough to knock him down, but enough to give his body a fact it could not argue with. Warm weight. Fur. Breath. A living shoulder pressed against his thigh. The dog wedged himself between Bishop and the corridor wall, then looked up with those amber eyes, steady as a hand placed over a shaking flame. Bishop dragged air into his lungs. Once. Again. Lan's voice came next, quiet and close. This is not your old war. Bishop shut his eyes. The words did not cure anything. They were not magic. They did not erase the old corridor or the names buried there. But they gave him a place to put his feet. Lan continued, "This is only us, and we are still here." Bishop opened his eyes. Mara had stopped the team. Mercer stood with his flashlight pointed down, giving Bishop the dignity of not staring. Min looked at the floor, pretending to study a crack in the concrete. Atlas stayed pressed against him. Bishop loosened his grip on the leash. "I'm good," he said. His voice was rough. Lan raised one eyebrow. "No," he corrected. "I'm here." She accepted that. "Here is enough, Tukumri." They moved again, slower this time. At the end of the corridor, Atlas led them to the underside of the refrigerated truck's external storage compartment. The panel beneath it had been left ajar. Inside were rags, a pry tool, a disposable glove, and a folded scrap of paper stuck to the damp metal by grime. Mara photographed it before touching. Then she eased the paper free. It was not a full document, just a torn half-sheet from a county office memo pad, folded twice. On it, written in blue ink, were three things. Safe 3B 610 AM RCDI. WH. Mara stared at the initials. Lan did not ask. She already knew. "Red Clay Development Initiative," she said. Mercer's jaw tightened. "WH. Wade Holland," Bishop said. Mara looked at her watch. It was 5:38 a.m. "Safe 3B, Mercer said. "Sheriff's Administrative Office has internal evidence safes, numbered by section. I don't know if 3B is one of them, but it sounds right." Mara was already moving toward the exit. If the missing pages are going to Hollis, that memo means transfer or destruction at 6:10. Lan looked toward the truck. "They brought the packet here, took what they needed, and sent the rest onward." "To make it look like Kessler panicked and hid evidence sloppily," Mara said. "If Hollis dumps the missing pages, he can blame the deputy, deny the development link, and call the rest circumstantial." Mercer pulled out his phone. "I can get a state unit I trust within 20 minutes. "We may not have 20, Mara said. "You want to walk into a sheriff's office with thin paper and a dog?" "I want a judge awake in the next 5 minutes. Mercer was already dialing. "Then pray he likes coffee." Bishop looked down at Atlas. The German shepherd had one paw on the edge of the truck compartment, nicked ear forward, muzzle dusted faintly with grime. He had found the trail, recovered what could be recovered, and dragged Bishop out of a corridor his mind had tried to turn into a grave. Lan stepped beside Bishop. "You can still leave," she said. He looked at her. There was no accusation in her face. Only honesty. She had offered him a door because she knew what it meant to be trapped without one. Bishop looked toward the cold storage entrance, where morning light cut a pale rectangle into the dark. Then he looked at the recovered packet in Mara's evidence bag. He thought of Rosa hiding her envelope. Min saying he was tired of surviving by not noticing. Caleb with his cracked phone. Than Nguyen building a plywood kingdom for a woman who still opened it every morning. And Atlas, standing between all of them and the road ahead. "I'm not here to be a hero," Bishop said. Lan's mouth softened. "Good. Heroes are exhausting. I'm here as a witness." "Witness is heavier," she said. "I know." For once he did. Outside, Captain Mercer spoke quickly into his phone, giving names, times, and legal phrases that began turning fear into procedure. Mara stood beside him, one hand pressed to her earpiece, the other holding her black notebook open to a page of arrows and account numbers. The cold storage building groaned behind them, its dead walls surrendering secrets one scrape of paper at a time. At 5:43 a.m., Mara looked up. "We move toward the courthouse line first," she said. "Mercer is calling a judge. If we get emergency authorization, we go to the sheriff's office." Lon lifted her chin. Min zipped his tool bag, though he had barely opened it. Bishop clipped Atlas's leash shorter, not because he feared the dog would run, but because they were stepping into a place where every inch would matter. The missing pages were no longer hidden in the cold. They were on their way to power. And power, Bishop knew, was most dangerous when it believed morning still belonged to it. Morning came to Red Clay Crossing wearing fog. It lay low over the road, caught in the ditches and the wire fences, softening the town's hard edges until even the sheriff's office looked less certain of itself. The brick building stood at the center of town beside the courthouse annex, with an American flag lifting and falling in the damp air. Its windows were clean. Its steps had been swept. Its sign read, "Sheriff Wade Hollis" in proud black letters, as if paint could make a man honest. Bishop Callahan stood across the street with Atlas at his side and felt the strange weight of not moving. In another life, another kind of morning, he would have been moving already. Through a door, down a corridor, toward a target. Action had once been the language he understood best. The body did not have to ask moral questions when orders arrived faster than doubt. But today was different. Today, the bravest thing he could do was stand where he was and let the law arrive before anger did. Special Agent Mara Ellison was on the courthouse steps with Captain Joel Mercer, speaking in low voices with a county judge who looked as if he had been pulled from sleep and buttoned into his shirt by civic duty alone. The judge was a narrow man in his 60s, with silver hair flattened on one side and reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. He held Mercer's silver fountain pen, the same one the state police captain had used to weigh down his map at the cold storage building. Mara did not look tired anymore. She looked precise. That was more dangerous. She had arranged the evidence in the only order that mattered. Theft report, witness video, recovered transfer packet, partial missing documents, Gulf County seafood invoices, the note marked Safe 3B, 6:10 a.m., RCDI, WH. Her voice never rose. Her hands did not shake. She built the warrant one fact at a time, not like a speech, but like a bridge. Bishop respected that. Bridges saved more people than explosions. Behind him, Red Clay Crossing gathered quietly. No crowd had been invited. No one had announced a protest. Yet people came the way weather comes, one small change at a time until the whole sky has altered. Rosa Delgado arrived first, her denim overshirt damp at the shoulders, one hand wrapped around a folder of receipts she had hidden for months. Her son, a tall 15-year-old with school books hugged to his chest, stood beside her, trying to look older than his fear. Rosa kept touching the small silver sun pendant at her throat. Min Tran parked his work truck crookedly near the curb, then carried his dash camera in both hands as if it were a fragile animal. His blue workshirt was clean but wrinkled, Mayan stitched above his heart. He did not speak much. He simply stood beside Rosa, and that was a sentence of its own. Caleb, the newspaper boy, rolled up on his bicycle with a plastic bag over the seat and his cracked phone protected under his jacket. He tried to stand behind the adults until Lon beckoned him forward with 2 fingers. "You saw," she told him. Caleb swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." "Then you stand where seeing matters." He did. Last came Eli Porter, and the town seemed to make room for him without being asked. He was an old black man with a weathered face, a cane in one hand, and a brown suit that had been brushed carefully though the cuffs had frayed. His white hair was cut close, and his eyes carried the disappointed patience of someone who had spent too many years watching institutions fail slowly. Once, people whispered, Eli had worn a deputy's badge under Sheriff Hollis's predecessor. He had retired early, depending on who told it, either because of his knees or because he had refused to misplace complaints that powerful men wanted lost. Under one arm, Eli carried a ledger, not a new one, a black hardbound book with corners softened by years of handling. Lon saw it and went still. You kept one too, she said. Eli looked at the sheriff's office. Old habit, bad memory for birthdays, good memory for wrong. For a moment, no one laughed. Then Lon did, very softly. The sound changed something. Not much. Enough. Atlas sat at Bishop's left, calm but alert. Sable coat darkened from the morning mist. Children stared at him with the wide-eyed reverence usually reserved for fire trucks and impossible desserts. He ignored the attention with grave professionalism. When Rosa's son shifted nervously, Atlas turned his head and blinked once, slow and steady. The boy's shoulders lowered by a fraction. Bishop saw it. That was Atlas's gift. Not just teeth, not just scent. The dog gave frightened people a rhythm to borrow. Lan stood near Bishop, her gray coat buttoned over the pale blue apron she refused to remove. Her brass keys hung from the crooked pocket. The red pen was there too. So was the plastic-wrapped notebook. She looked, Bishop thought, like a woman who had brought her whole store to war because no one had taught her how to surrender. Across the street, Mara turned from the judge. She held a signed warrant. Mercer nodded once. The morning tightened. 2 state police vehicles rolled in without sirens, followed by an unmarked federal sedan. No one shouted. No one rushed. That made it more serious. Sirens belonged to panic. This belonged to consequence. Mara crossed the street toward Lan first. We have authorization, she said. Sheriff's Administrative Office, evidence safes, digital storage, campaign-related correspondence, and any materials connected to Gulf County Seafood or Red Clay Development Initiative. Lan nodded. Her hand went into her apron pocket and closed around the keys. They will say we are confused, she said. Mara's face softened, barely. Then we will be very organized. Bishop looked toward the sheriff's office. Dean Kessler came out before they reached the steps. He must have been watching from inside. His tan uniform was pressed, but not as perfect as the day before. His collar sat wrong. His silver sunglasses were hooked into his chest pocket as always, but one lens was smudged. For a man like Kessler, that was almost a confession. He saw Lan, then Bishop, then Atlas. His mouth twisted. Well, he called down from the steps. Look at this. The whole little market brought a parade. No one answered. That seemed to bother him more than anger would have. Kessler came down 2 steps, planting himself as if the building had grown him there. This is county property. Unless you people have business. Mara lifted the warrant. We do. Kessler's eyes flicked over the paper but did not settle. You got a federal hobby now, Ellison? I have a signed warrant. For what? A confused complaint from a woman who doesn't understand county operations? Lan took 1 step forward. Bishop felt Atlas rise beside him, but the dog did not move ahead. Not this time. He remained beside Bishop, as if he understood that today, the shield was not his body alone. Lan looked up at Kessler. You called me Lana for 2 years, she said. You said my English was not good enough for forms. You said people like me should be grateful if the county looked the other way. Kessler's face tightened. Careful. No. Lan's voice stayed soft. You were careful. Every envelope, every fake inspection, every small amount. You were careful because you thought small people cannot add. Behind her, Rosa opened her folder. Min held up his camera. Eli rested both hands on his ledger. Caleb clutched his cracked phone. Lon looked toward the sheriff's office windows. But old people remember. Mothers keep receipts. Repairmen notice trucks. Children see what men in power forget to hide. She turned back to Kessler. And bookkeepers remember longer than all of you. For once, Kessler had no clever reply ready, ever. Bishop felt the words move through the people behind them. Not like a cheer. Better than a cheer. They stood straighter, each by a little, and the little added up. Mercer stepped between Mara and Kessler. "Deputy, move aside!" Kessler looked past him, toward the glass doors. A man appeared behind them. Sheriff Wade Hollis came out wearing a white dress shirt, a navy tie, and a dark brown sheriff's jacket with the county patch sewn cleanly on the arm. He was broad, soft through the middle, silver blonde hair combed back, silver mustache trimmed with the care of a man who believed appearances could be notarized. A large gold ring flashed on his right hand as he pushed through the door. He smiled when he saw the people outside, not warmly, politically. "Captain Mercer," Hollis said. "Mara, quite a morning. Nobody told me we were hosting a town meeting." Mara handed him a copy of the warrant. "We're executing a federal search with state support." Hollis took the paper and glanced at it with the patience of a man reading a restaurant menu he had already decided to complain about. "This is unnecessary," he said. "If there were concerns, my office would have cooperated." Mercer said, "Your office is named in the evidence." The smile dimmed, only slightly. Hollis looked toward Lon. "Mrs. Nguyen, I'm sorry if Deputy Kessler was overzealous yesterday. These misunderstandings happen when emotions run high." Lon did not blink. Money did not misunderstand. A murmur passed through the people behind her. Hollis's gaze hardened for the length of a breath, then smoothed itself again. "Let's not turn accounting errors into theater." Mara stepped forward. "Then you won't object to us preserving the records." Hollis turned his head toward the doors. Bishop saw it. So did Atlas. Not guilt exactly. Calculation. A small glance toward the interior hallway, too quick for most people. But Bishop had spent a lifetime reading the half-second before men moved. Atlas's ears came forward. Hollis handed the warrant back to Mara. "Of course. We'll provide access." But as Mercer and Mara climbed the steps, Hollis shifted backward, his hand moving toward the radio at his belt. Kessler blocked the doorway for one heartbeat too long. Mercer's voice changed. "Deputy." Kessler stepped aside. Inside, the sheriff's office smelled of floor wax, paper, coffee, and old authority. Deputies at desks looked up, confused, then very careful. The walls held plaques, flags, framed newspaper clippings, photographs of Hollis shaking hands at parades and charity cookouts. In every image, he smiled as if he had invented public trust. Bishop remained near the entrance with Atlas, as instructed. Lon stood beside him. The rest of the townspeople waited outside under Mercer's order, visible through the glass. Mara and Mercer moved down the hall toward the administrative offices. Hollis walked with them, speaking smoothly. "Evidence safes are logged. Any access will need proper documentation. My administrator is not in yet." Mara said, "Then you'll open them." "I don't personally manage." A sound came from the back office. Small, Metal against metal, not loud enough to alarm anyone who was not listening for the world to betray itself? Atlas heard it first. His head snapped toward the hallway. He did not bark. He moved his body one step forward and looked at Bishop. Bishop did not follow immediately. He looked to Mara. She had heard it too. "Hollis," she said. "Stop." The sheriff stopped walking. His right hand was still near his ring, thumb rotating it slowly. In the narrow hallway beyond him, a frosted glass office door stood half-closed. Behind it, a shadow moved. Mercer drew his voice into a blade. "Who's in that office?" Hollis smiled again, but the smile had lost its architecture. Probably clerical staff. "Your administrator isn't in," Mara said. The shadow moved again. A paper shredder began to run. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a hungry mechanical whine from behind frosted glass. For half a second, no one moved. Then Mara said, "Open it." Hollis did not. Mercer stepped past him and pushed the door. It was locked. The shredder kept whining. Atlas gave one sharp bark. The whole office flinched. Bishop placed one hand on the dog's collar. Not to restrain violence, but to anchor urgency. Mercer took a ring of keys from Hollis's stunned administrator desk, where they hung on a hook marked internal. He tried one key, then another. Inside, the shredder stopped. A drawer slammed. The third key turned. Mercer opened the door. The room beyond was Hollis's private administrative office. A wall of framed campaign photographs looked down over a desk, a locked evidence safe, and a side table where a paper shredder sat with thin strips curling inside its bin. Sheriff Hollis stood too far from the door for a man who claimed he had not entered. His jacket sleeve was creased, his breathing controlled but too deliberate. On the desk lay a stack of papers. Mara crossed to them first. There it was, the missing Hollis campaign support pass transfer summary, folded beneath a blank county memo. Beside it, partially fed into the shredder, was a red clay development initiative property option list. Only the top third had been cut. Mara photographed everything before touching it. Mercer moved to the safe. "Safe 3B?" he asked. No one answered. Lon appeared in the doorway behind Bishop. She did not cross the threshold. Her hands were clasped in front of her apron. The safe opened under Mercer's authority after Hollis, cornered by the warrant and witnesses, gave the code through clenched teeth. Inside were folders. Not many. Enough. Bank transfer summaries, cash deposit records, duplicate invoice batches from Gulf County Seafood, a payment ledger with initials DK beside recurring amounts, property acquisition options connected to Red Clay Development Initiative, a handwritten note on Sheriff's Office stationery referencing community security compliance, and pressure sequence for non-cooperative shops. Mara read without speaking. Mercer's face had gone gray with anger held carefully behind law. Lon's lips moved once. Bishop thought she might be praying. Then Mara held up one page. "Sheriff Wade Hollis," she said, voice clear enough to carry down the hall. "You are being detained pending federal charges related to obstruction, extortion under color of law, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and destruction of evidence." Hollis looked not at Mara, but toward the front windows. The people outside were watching. For the first time that morning, he seemed to understand that his audience had changed. Kessler tried to back toward the side exit. Atlas turned his head. That was all. The deputy stopped. Mercer spoke to a state trooper in the hall. Deputy Kessler, too. Kessler's face flushed red. For what? Mara did not look away from Hollis. "Start with yesterday's recorded threat and work forward," The arrests were quiet. No struggle, no grand speech, no revenge. Just hands guided behind backs, rights read in steady voices, radios murmuring, evidence bags opening, badge numbers written down. Hollis's gold ring caught the fluorescent light as a trooper removed his duty belt. Kessler stared at the floor like a man hoping the tiles might swallow him before the town did. When Hollis's badge was removed from his jacket, the sound was almost nothing. A small metallic click. Yet Bishop felt it move through the building like a bell struck underwater. Outside, no one cheered. Rosa covered her mouth. Min bowed his head. Caleb stared with wide eyes, perhaps learning too early and exactly that uniforms could carry either duty or rot, depending on the heart beneath them. Eli Porter removed his hat and held it against his chest. Lon stepped out of the sheriff's office into the fog-thinned morning. Her hand trembled. Not with fear now, with release. Atlas went to her before Bishop did. The German shepherd lowered his head and pressed his muzzle into her open palm. Lan bent slowly, touching the silver at his chin, then the small nick on his right ear. "Gioi Lam Khan," she whispered. Bishop did not know the words. He knew the tone. It was what people sounded like when, after years of being told their pain was paperwork, someone finally stamped it truth. Lan looked back at the sheriff's office where evidence boxes began to move through the doors. Then she looked at the people who had come with her. "Go open your shops," she said. Rosa laughed through tears. "Today?" Lan wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. "Especially today." The fog lifted a little more. Across the street, the sign with Hollis's name remained above the building. But it had already begun to look temporary. Bishop stood beside Atlas, watching the people of Red Clay Crossing gather around Lan not like spectators, but like witnesses finally learning their own height. For a long time, he had believed courage was a thing that charged forward. That morning, he saw it stand in a line outside a sheriff's office, holding receipts, cracked phones, old ledgers, and trembling hands. And none of it looked small anymore. Red Clay Crossing did not become a righteous town by lunchtime. No town ever did. By noon, Sheriff Wade Hollis's name still hung above the brick building downtown, though men with ladders had already begun discussing how to remove it without damaging the signboard. By afternoon, the gossip had grown 3 heads and 6 different versions. Some people said they had always suspected him. Some said they never had. Some lowered their voices and claimed the whole thing was politics, because there were always people who would rather blame politics than admit they had ignored cruelty in plain daylight. But something had changed. It was not clean. It was not complete. It was only real. Rosa Delgado still had to sit with Special Agent Mara Ellison and explain why she had signed invoices for services her laundromat never received. Mintran still had to hand over records that made him look guilty on paper, even though guilt had never been the thing that forced his signature. Caleb's mother cried when she learned he had recorded the truck, then scolded him for being near an alley at 2 a.m, then hugged him so hard his cracked phone almost fell from his pocket. Lan Nguyen had the longest road of all. There would be statements, copies, lawyers, court dates, men in suits asking the same question 3 different ways to see if age, accent, and grief might make her contradict herself. The world loved justice in speeches, but in practice it often arrived holding a clipboard and asking for another form. Lan understood clipboards. She opened Lan's market the next morning anyway. The bell above the door rang before the coffee finished brewing, then rang again, then again. People came in carrying reasons to be there, A bag of rice, cough drops, laundry soap, batteries, sliced bread, instant noodles, ginger candy, motor oil, milk. But after they paid, they stayed a little too long. Rosa wiped one shelf without being asked. Min replaced the loose screw on the front door hinge and pretended it had bothered him for years. Caleb delivered newspapers to the rack, then rearranged them twice, as if the headlines might behave better if disciplined. Eli Porter came by with a brown paper bag of peaches and said nothing about the sheriff. He only placed the bag on the counter and told Lan the fruit was from his sister's tree. Lan looked inside. "These are bruised," she said. "So am I," Eli replied. She accepted them. That became the language of the day. Not triumph, not celebration, just bruised things being carried carefully from one hand to another. Bishop stayed near the back of the store, repairing the splintered frame around the rear door. He had told himself he was only staying long enough to give his statement, secure the evidence transfer, and make sure Lan was not alone when the first wave of questions came. But one day became two. Two became three. The road remained open, his truck had gas, and still he found one more thing that needed fixing: the rear lock, the loose shelf, the old camera mount, a strip of weatherproofing that had given up in a heroic but unsuccessful manner. Lan noticed everything. "You are pretending to be useful," she said on the third afternoon. Bishop tightened a screw. "It's working." "No, you are useful. You are pretending that is why you stay." Atlas lay near the end of the aisle by the rice sacks, his chin on his paws, watching two children attempt to feed him bits of sausage from a paper plate. He accepted one piece with grave restraint, then looked toward Bishop as if reporting the moral decline of the younger generation. Lan pointed at the dog. "He stays because people give him meat. More honest." Bishop glanced at Atlas. "Traitor." Atlas swallowed the sausage and did not apologize. Lan laughed, and this time the sound was not paper being folded. It was warmer. Worn, yes, but warmer. Like a kettle that had been dented and still knew how to sing. That evening, after the last customer left and the open sign turned dark, Lan made him dinner. She called it simple FIFO, then proceeded to produce a bowl large enough to silence a lesser man. Steam rose from the broth, carrying ginger, star anise, onion, basil, and something deeper that Bishop could not name. The noodles tangled beneath thin slices of beef. A plate of herbs sat beside it, with lime wedges and bean sprouts arranged like she was feeding a visiting ambassador, instead of a man who had spent 20 minutes arguing with a door hinge. "You eat," she said. "I was going to. You look like you negotiate with soup." Bishop lifted the spoon. Lan watched him take the first bite with the intensity of a general observing artillery. "Well?" He nodded. "Good. Good." She looked offended on behalf of every ancestor who had ever boiled bones. "American man? Big shoulders? Small vocabulary?" Bishop took another bite. "Very good. Better." Atlas sat beside the table, politely not begging with the full discipline of a creature begging spiritually. Lan placed a small piece of plain boiled chicken in his bowl. "No spices," she told him. "I respect your profession." Bishop looked at her over the steam. "What profession?" Lan nodded toward Atlas. "Moral supervisor." For the first time in days, Bishop laughed without catching himself afterward. It surprised him. Not the laugh, the lack of shame after it. Later, when the dishes were washed and the store settled into its evening creaks, Lan brought tea to the little office in the back. The photograph of Than Nguyen still sat beside the lamp. Bishop had begun to understand that the picture was not decoration. It was an anchor. Maybe all survivors kept anchors disguised as ordinary things. A photo, a keyring, a scratched watch, a dog tag hidden in a drawer, a dog's head under one tired hand. Lan placed one mug in front of Bishop and sat across from him. "Tomorrow Mara comes again," she said. "Then lawyers, then more papers, maybe court, maybe reporters, maybe people who suddenly remember they are my friend. You'll have help." "Yes." She looked into her tea. "That is new." Outside, rain tapped softly against the back window. Not the hard rain of danger. Not the cinematic kind that announced disaster. Just ordinary rain, the kind that made roofs speak and old buildings smell of wood. Bishop turned the mug slowly in his hands. "I used to hate quiet," he said. Lan did not look up too quickly. She knew how to receive a fragile thing without startling it. He continued, "After I got out, people thought quiet would help. Small rooms, clean sheets, no radio chatter, no one yelling coordinates, but quiet. Quiet gave my head too much space." Lan nodded. "My first year in America, I hated quiet too," she said. "Not because of war like yours. Because everyone I loved was far away or dead or working too much. Quiet made English louder." Bishop looked at her. She smiled faintly. "You know, when you do not understand everything, every word becomes a door that might close before you reach it." He did not answer right away. That was all right. Some conversations were not meant to run. They were meant to sit between people until they learned the room. "I'm ashamed of it sometimes," Bishop said at last. "Of what?" "Being trained for everything, then coming home and losing sleep to a door closing in a motel." Lan's eyes softened, but not with pity. Bishop was grateful for that. "Survivors do this," she said. "They compare pain like grocery prices. This one bigger, this one smaller, this one on sale. Very foolish." Bishop looked down at his scratched watch. Lan leaned back in her chair. "A survivor does not owe anyone being healed on schedule." The words entered quietly. They did not break anything open. They did not fix him. But they found a place on the shelf inside him where he might return to them later. Atlas, asleep beneath the table, exhaled with such heavy seriousness that both Bishop and Lan looked down. Lan whispered, "He agrees. I think he's dreaming about sausage." Also healing. The rain strengthened. By the time the road began to flood near the gas station, Lan declared Bishop too tired to drive and too stubborn to know it. She made up the narrow cot in the back room with 2 folded blankets and a pillow that smelled faintly of lavender detergent. Bishop wanted to refuse. The old reflex rose in him immediately. Leave before kindness asks for something in return. But Lan did not ask. She simply set the pillow down and said, "Door locks from inside. Window sticks but opens. Atlas can sleep wherever he judges us least incompetent." Then she left him there. No ceremony. That helped. Bishop stood in the small back room and listened to the rain on the roof. The cot was against the wall. The door was visible. The window was visible. The hallway beyond it was dark but not hidden. He checked the lock once. His hand hovered. The old rhythm waited. Check it again. And again. Then put the chair under the knob. Then move the cot. Then stay awake until dawn and call it caution. Atlas watched him from the doorway, not judging, witnessing. Bishop let his hand fall. Once was enough. The thought felt absurdly dangerous. He took the chair and placed it near the wall, angled toward the door, But he did not block the exit. He removed his boots. That alone felt like trust. He sat on the cot, elbows on knees, the scratched watch catching a thin line of light from the hall. Atlas came in, circled once, and lay beside the cot with his head under Bishop's hand. The rain softened. From the front of the store came the distant sound of Lan moving one last thing into place. A drawer closing, a key turning, her steps slow but steady. Then silence. Bishop waited for the panic to arrive. It came, but smaller. Not gone, never gone. Only smaller, like a storm seen far out over water instead of overhead. He rested his hand on Atlas's head, feeling the warmth of the dog's skull, the slight movement of breathing, the living proof that he was not alone in the dark. His eyes closed, opened once, closed again. Somewhere in the night, he slept. Not perfectly. Not like a man untouched by memory. He dreamed, perhaps. He shifted once when thunder rolled beyond the fields. His fingers tightened in Atlas's fur, and Atlas lifted his head until Bishop's breathing steadied again. But Bishop did not wake standing. He did not reach for a weapon that was not there. He did not spend the whole night guarding a door against ghosts. Morning arrived without asking permission. Sunlight entered through the thin curtains in pale gold stripes. The rain had stopped. Bishop opened his eyes to the smell of coffee, old wood, ginger, and something frying in a pan. For several seconds, he did not move. The room was still the room. The door was still the door. Atlas was asleep on his side, one ear folded, looking for once less like a judge and more like a dog who had earned a ridiculous amount of chicken. Bishop sat up slowly. His body felt heavy, but not hunted. That difference nearly undid him. He placed one hand over his face and breathed once, then again. There was no miracle, no bright revelation, no clean ending tied in a ribbon. Sheriff Hollis had not been convicted. Kessler had not answered for every envelope. Rosa, Min, Caleb, Eli, Lan, all of them still had to walk through rooms where people would question what they had lived. And Bishop was still Bishop. Scarred eyebrow, tired eyes, old watch. Too many exits counted across too many years. But that morning, he had slept. A little. Enough. The bell above the front door rang. Lan's voice floated through the store. "We are open. Do not stand there letting flies in." A customer laughed. Bishop smiled before he meant to. He and Atlas left Red Clay Crossing after breakfast. Lan packed food for the road, despite Bishop insisting he did not need it. She ignored him with practiced excellence. Into a paper bag went 2 sandwiches, ginger candy, 3 dog biscuits, a thermos of tea, and a peach from Eli's sister's tree. "You feed him too much," Bishop said, nodding at Atlas. Lan looked offended. "I feed him correctly. I am still studying." Rosa came by to hug Lan and shook Bishop's hand with both of hers. Min promised to send Mara the rest of his camera files. Caleb asked if Atlas would remember him. Bishop said Atlas kept a strict record of sausage providers, which seemed to satisfy the boy. At the door, Lan stood beneath the faded sign of Lan's Market, small in her gray coat and crooked blue apron, brass keys at her side. The morning light caught the clean windows her husband had once insisted on, and for a moment Bishop could almost see the younger couple in the photograph standing there too, laughing with oversized scissors, believing plywood could become a kingdom if held together by stubborn love. Lan held out her hand. Bishop took it carefully. "Drive safe," she said. He nodded. "Keep the door hinge oiled. I have Min now. You are replaceable." "Good." Her face softened. "Not completely." He looked away first. Atlas stepped forward and pressed his muzzle into her palm. Lon bent, touched the silver at his chin, then the nick in his right ear. "Good boy," she said in English. Then, quieter in Vietnamese, "Ji bin an." Bishop did not know the words, but he understood the blessing. He climbed into the pickup. Atlas took the passenger seat with imperial seriousness. As they pulled away, the bell above Lon's door rang again behind them. Another customer entered. Another ordinary morning began in a town still learning how to be honest. In the rearview mirror, Lan's market grew smaller, not weaker. Smaller things only looked small from a distance. Bishop kept one hand on the wheel and, for once, did not touch the scratched watch right away. Atlas rested his head against the window, amber eyes half closed, sable fur warmed by the sun. There were battles still coming, courtrooms, statements, bad nights, good mornings that did not last as long as they should. Bishop knew better than to believe one town, one woman, one dog, or one night of sleep could save a man entirely. But maybe saving was not always a lightning strike. Maybe sometimes it was a bell above the store door, a bowl of soup, a crooked apron, a dog standing exactly where fear expected no one to stand, and a tired former soldier driving toward the open road, carrying with him the first fragile proof that peace did not have to arrive all at once. Sometimes it came on 4 paws, waited beside your bed, and stayed until morning. In the end, Bishop did not leave Red Clay Crossing with every wound healed. Lan did not get every lost year back, and Atlas did not perform a miracle that erased the darkness overnight. But sometimes grace comes quietly. It comes through a small store that keeps its door open, through an old woman who refuses to disappear, through neighbors who finally stand together, through a faithful dog who knows when a tired soul needs someone to stay beside him until morning. Maybe that is the lesson of this story. Healing does not always arrive as a thunderclap. Sometimes it arrives as one honest witness, one brave choice, one gentle hand, and one peaceful night after many restless ones. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us about someone, or even an animal, who helped you find hope when life felt heavy. And if you believe stories of loyalty, courage, and second chances still matter, please subscribe and stay with us for the next one. May God give you peace in the places no one else can see, and may you never forget that even the smallest light can guide someone home.